Wow, get this. The U.S. government's going head-to-head with Google, and it could seriously change how we all use the internet. We're talking potential breakups, forced sales. It's a whole legal drama.
Oh, yeah, it's a landmark case for
Yeah.
sure, the Department of Justice, and they've got some states backing them up. They want Google to sell off Chrome, the web browser. They're saying Google's got this illegal monopoly on internet search and that Chrome is a big part of that.
Okay, so Chrome is everywhere. I get that. But how are they saying Google's playing unfairly?
Well, think of it this way. Your web browser, it's like the door to the internet, right? So the DOJ, they're arguing that Google is using Chrome's popularity to basically control what you see online, how you experience the whole thing. They're even saying that Google's success with Chrome is all from ill-gotten gains, like they're taking advantage of their position to shut out any competition.
So it's like Google built this amazing house, but then they're saying nobody else is allowed on the property.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to put it. And it's not just Chrome either. The DOJ is going after Android too, Google's mobile operating system. They're saying they're using it to give their own products and services an unfair advantage, just like with the browser.
So it's a double whammy, then control over computers and phones.
Yeah.
So besides selling Chrome, what does the DOJ actually want Google to do?
Well, they've got this whole plan, and it's pretty aggressive. One big thing is these exclusive deals. You know how some websites only pop up in Google searches? The DOJ wants to get rid of those agreements. They think it's stifling competition, hurting those smaller publishers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've definitely noticed that sometimes it feels like Google's the only way to find anything online these days.
Exactly. And they also want to stop Google from being able to invest in or buy any other search engines. Like they're trying to prevent them from just swallowing up any potential rivals before they can even get going.
It's like saying, all right, Google, you're big enough. No more gobbling up the competition.
Yeah.
What about the whole AI thing? I know Google's really into that.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge part of this, too. So the DOJ wants to give publishers the control over whether Google can use their content to train their AI systems. It's kind of a big deal because Google uses massive amounts of data from websites to basically teach its AI how to understand stuff and answer our questions.
So it's about who controls the data, who controls the AI. What's Google saying about all this, though? They can't be happy about the government trying to take apart what they've built.
Definitely not. Google's fighting back with everything they've got. Their chief legal officer even called the DOJ's proposal a radical interventionist agenda. They're saying it'll hurt consumers less innovation, higher prices, and they're even saying that it'll actually hurt America's position as a tech leader in the world.
So they're pulling out all the stops. What about that choice screen idea specifically, the one where Google would have to show users other search engines?
Their argument is that it would make searching a mess and just confuse people. They're saying users like the simple Google interface, and forcing them to see a bunch of other options would be annoying.
Yeah, I can see both sides of that. I like things to be clean and simple, but it'd be good to see some real alternatives out there.
Exactly. And that's what makes this case so interesting. There are good points on both sides. It's definitely not black and white, but here's where it gets really tricky. Even if Google has to sell Chrome, there's no guarantee that people will actually switch to a different search engine.
You mean we're all so used to Google that we might just stick with it out of habit?
It's a real possibility. Google's built a really effective system, and breaking that habit could be tough for a lot of people. And then there's another wild card at the presidential election.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The new administration could have a huge impact on all of this.
Absolutely. We've heard criticism of Google from both sides of the aisle, but we've also seen some hesitation to break up big companies. It's really hard to predict how a new administration will approach this whole thing.
So we've got high-stakes, powerful players and an outcome that nobody can really predict. It's like a legal thriller happening in real life.
You got it. And it brings up so many questions. Will the judge agree with the DOJ and force these changes on Google? Will Google manage to work out some kind of compromise? And probably the most important question, how will all this change the way we use the internet in the years to come?
Those are really great questions. And for our listener, if you were the judge, what would you decide? Would you force Google to break up this empire they've built? Or would you let them keep operating the way they are now? It's a really complex issue with no easy answers. We'll be back to dig into this even more after a short break.
Yeah, it's a really tough call. I mean, breaking up a company as big as Google, it could have consequences that nobody expects. But letting them keep all that control, well, that raises some serious questions about fairness and whether there's real competition out there.
It's like you're trying to balance on a really thin wire. What can happen to Google if the judge sides with the DOJ? Like, what are the possible outcomes?
Well, it could be a huge blow to Google. We're not just talking about losing money, but it could completely change their whole business model. You see, Google built this whole empire on the idea that all their services work together. You take away those connections, and their whole ecosystem could fall apart.
So the government's plan could backfire. Like, what if breaking up Google actually stops innovation and hurts America's ability to compete in the tech world?
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. I mean, Google's been a big part of all the progress in tech. Breaking them up could really slow things down. But some people say that having more competition could actually lead to even more innovation. New companies would pop up challenging the way things are done.
Like a chess game where every move changes the whole board.
Yeah.
So have other companies faced this kind of challenge before?
Oh, all the time. Think about Standard Oil, AT&T, Microsoft. They all had to deal with antitrust lawsuits, and it completely changed their industries. Sometimes the companies came back stronger than ever, but sometimes they struggled to keep up. It really depends on how they respond to the challenge, whether they can keep innovating and stay ahead of the game.
So nobody knows for sure what will happen to Google. It all depends on whether they can adapt and change, maybe even ditch some of their less successful projects and focus on what they do best.
Exactly. This whole case might force them to be quicker, more focused, better at responding to what the market wants.
So beyond Google, what about the rest of the tech industry? If the DOJ wins, could this set off a chain reaction where other big tech companies get hit with antitrust lawsuits?
Definitely. This case could set the standard for how governments handle these kinds of situations in the digital age. We might see more action against Amazon, Facebook, Apple. They'd all be under the microscope. Maybe even more breakups down the line.
Like dominoes.
Yeah.
One falls and the rest start to wobble.
You got it. It could shift the whole balance of power in the tech world. Some good things could come out of it, but there are downsides too, for consumers and companies.
I see what you mean. More competition could mean lower prices, more new products, more choices for people. But it could also lead to things being less organized, less stable, and maybe even a drop in the quality of the services we use.
It's complicated, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how hard it is to regulate these massive tech companies. I mean, they've become such a big part of our lives. It's like trying to untangle a huge knot. Where do you even start?
That's the million-dollar question,
Yes.
right? And governments all over the world are trying to figure it out. There's no simple answer. It takes careful thought, a really nuanced approach, and a willingness to adapt because the tech landscape is always changing. This is a great discussion, and I bet our listeners are hanging on every word. But let me ask a more basic question. What's the goal here? What are we trying to accomplish by breaking up these big tech companies?
That's a really great question. At the heart of it all, it's about making sure the marketplace is fair and competitive so that new ideas can flourish and people have real choices.
But is breaking up these companies really the only way to do that?
That's what everyone's debating. Some say you have to break up these monopolies to level the playing field so they can't crush the competition. Others think that regulating them and keeping an eye on them is a better way to stop them from being unfair without killing innovation.
It's tough to decide. How do you weigh the good things that could come from more competition against the risks of messing with these companies that are so innovative?
It's a balancing act for sure, and it's a conversation that's not going away anytime soon. We're in uncharted territory here in the digital age.
This case really shows how hard it is to balance innovation and competition and what's good for consumers in a world where technology is changing so fast.
Absolutely. It's not just about the law. It's about the role of technology in society and who has the power in our digital world.
It makes you wonder if we're even asking the right questions. What if we're too focused on breaking up companies and not focused enough on the things that let them get so big in the first place?
You've hit on something important there. Maybe we need to rethink how we handle antitrust laws. Maybe there are other solutions that encourage competition without stopping innovation.
It feels like we're at a fork in the road. One path leads to a tech landscape that's more broken up and maybe less creative. The other path means finding new ways to regulate these powerful companies without stopping them from doing what they do best.
We have to have this conversation as a society. It's a challenge, but it's crucial. The decisions we make today will have a huge impact on technology and how it shapes our lives.
It can feel overwhelming for people who aren't lawyers or politicians. What can everyday people do to make their voices heard in this debate?
There are lots of ways to get involved. Stay informed about what's going on. Support groups that fight for fair competition and consumer rights. And contact your elected officials to tell them what you think.
It's about realizing that we have a say in this. We're not just passive consumers of technology. We can help decide how it evolves.
Exactly. As this case moves forward, we'll be watching closely and giving you the information and analysis you need to stay in the loop and stay involved.
So to our listeners, keep digging into these ideas. Keep asking the tough questions. Keep pushing for a digital world that works for everyone. That's what the future of the internet depends on. It's the future of our digital society.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep fighting for a digital world that puts humanity first.
We've really dug deep into this case against Google.
Yeah, it makes you think about some really fundamental stuff, like
Yeah.
what role should technology play in our lives? Who really has the power in this digital world?
Exactly. We've talked about the legal arguments, what it could mean for the economy, how it might change the whole tech industry.
But we should take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What does this case say about how governments and tech companies interact? How do we balance innovation with making sure everyone has a fair shot? What can we do as individuals to shape what the digital world looks like in the future?
Those are some really big questions, and there aren't any easy answers. But this whole situation, it's like a starting point for these important conversations, like someone shining a light into the dark corners of the tech world, showing us how complicated it all is and what challenges we need to face.
I agree. It's a wake-up call for all of us to pay more attention, get involved, and be more active in shaping the kind of digital world we want to live in. We can't just sit back and accept things the way they are. We have to demand transparency, accountability, and fairness from these tech companies. They're so deeply connected to our lives now.
So as we wrap things up here, what's the main thing you hope our listeners take away from this deep dive?
I think the most important thing is to learn to think critically. Question the assumptions, challenge the stories, and have real conversations about the kind of digital future we want to build.
It's about realizing that we have a voice and a choice in all of this. We're not just passive consumers of technology. We can be active participants in how it develops.
Absolutely. And as this case moves forward, we'll be watching closely and giving you the information and analysis you need to stay informed and involved.
And to our listeners, keep exploring these ideas. Keep asking those tough questions. And keep pushing for a digital world that works for everyone. That's what the future of the internet depends on. It's the future of our digital society.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, keep digging deep, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a digital world that puts people first together.